Alessandra's heart races as the moon turns blood red, heralding a marking ceremony that's about to go awry. With the truth of her and Zane's deeper connection unveiled, will the ancient power of the blood moon rewrite their destinies? 𝐊𝐢𝐬𝐻𝐃 running out of kills. And like the moon, we must go through phases of emptiness to feel full again. Italy 1468. Rosanna watched as her mate entered the pack house. His white shirt was stained and his scent was tainted with the smell of a woman. Lorenzo's face was pulled in an angry frown as he ascended the stairs. Rosanna felt her heart stop as a tear escaped her right eye. How could he do this? A day ago, they had made it in the very spot she was standing. We should kill the woman. It's not her fault he can't keep it in his pants. Rosanna wiped her tears and stood straighter. She had vowed to never cry over a man again, and she intended to keep her promise. So this is how it's going to be, Rosanna asked Lorenzo in a malicious tone. He looked surprised to see her, but his face became stoic quickly. I have needs like every other man. And because you are an alpha, you think you can go and lay in other women's beds while your mate is supposed to stay home like a good little bitch. That's not what I meant, Rosanna. But you can't expect me to be tied to one woman, right? I've been single for nearly 80 years. Can play that game, Alpha. Rosanna spun on her heel and walked back to her room. Did he not feel what she did when they made love? Was this going to be a one-sided relationship? With a shake of her head, Rosanna thought of something. You shall receive what you give. 2 years later, 𝐶𝐻𝐬𝐸 get out. With a sigh, I relax against my chair and watch as she gathers her clothes and leaves my office. She looks back at me over her shoulder with what I think is supposed to be a seductive grin. My only reaction is a dismissive wave. She flicks her dark hair over her shoulder and exits through the door we had crashed through a few moments ago. She runs into Hiro on her way out, who looks at her with nonchalance before giving me a disapproving look. Ah, here he goes again. Seriously, Zane. You're becoming alpha and marking Isabel as your Luna in for days. What he just said is the exact reason I was letting Amira suck me off. It served as an escape from my reality. Soon I would be responsible for nearly 1,000 werewolves. I don't mind that, though. I've been preparing for this day my whole life, and even more so these past 2 years. My main problem is the wicked which I have to share that duty with. Unfortunately for me, Isabel becoming an Omega did not help her ego. She still has the power, thirsty look in her eye, as well as the belief that she is still a beta. I guess telling her that she would be my Luna one day was not the smartest idea. No need to remind me of what the future holds. You have to stop with your juvenile acts now that you are to be. You are the one person who knows just how hard I have worked these past 2 years to become the best alpha I can be. I said as I slammed my fist onto my desk. My eyes flashed gold and my nostrils flared as I looked at Hiro. The desk I had been fucking Amira on was about to crack because of how hard I had pounded my fist. I've spent my time working out and pushing my muscles to the point of agony, as well as doing tactical training with my father and Beta Antonio. My brain is crammed with the layout of the pack both here in California as well as in Italy. I know how many people there are in each division of our army. Hiro's been my partner through all of it, so he has no reason to accuse me of slacking off. I know. I'm sorry. It's just that I think you are making a mistake with Isabel. You and me both, buddy. If the past 2 years have told me anything, it's that Alessandra and I were truly never meant to be. Most wolves would have had the urge to run and go be with their mate, but I have been on my side of the world and Alessandra on hers. Personally, I think we have done better without each other, All the updates I've received on her have only shown that she is happy. Yes, I receive updates on her. I don't have to worry about keeping boys away from her because Ricardo is just as protective over her as I am. Plus, I've got my cousin Vincenzo over in Italy to keep an eye on her, so it's all good. I know it makes me a hypocrite, but it's not me who has murder on his mind when he thinks of another male touching Alessandra. It's my wolf, Raphael. Sure, blame it on me. It's true. Says the one who forbade Jaden from visiting Alessandra in Italy when 𝐊𝐢𝐬𝐩𝐿 and 𝐊𝐢𝐬𝐬 were going. So what? He's an asshole. I was doing her a favor. What about the assassin you almost hired when she got asked out by some guy? The keyword is almost. See, this is what I mean. It would have never worked out between us because I would just be fending off guys all the time and probably be charged with homicide. Even wolf laws have limits to the number of times you can commit murder. Zane. I turn around to see that Isabel is standing in the doorway. We have to go see Donata today. Remember, hero, check how this week's patrols went. I grab Isabel's hand and let her out through the pack house. Everyone gives us a nod of respect as we pass. I've learned that my packed respect has grown for me these past years as I have been putting more work into my future alpha duties. Isabel swipes her hand away from me as we get closer to the door of the house. Holding my hand after you fucked a girl won't convince the pack that we are some happy couple. What we present is what they see. Yeah? Well, what about what they hear, Zane? Everyone could hear her moans. Or did you forget that we have sharpened hearing? For starters, no one needs sharpened hearing to hear what I did to her, I say with a smug smile. She responds with a roll of her eyes that are sparkling with jealousy. Second of all, alphas fuck around a lot. Most of their marriages are political anyways. Ours isn't political, Zane. They think we are mates. No one cheats on their mate. Whatever. I will continue after we are marked. I never clarified that I never actually had sex with any of the girls. Just the things in between. It just never felt right, like it was too intimate. By the time our conversation ended, Isabel and I were already in front of Donata's cabin. She opens the door before we could knock and welcomes us in. What brings you by today? We want to make sure everything is looking good for our marking ceremony in Italy. Ah yes, I've already checked and it's going to be a full moon. A necessity for the ceremony. Isabel smiles at this and my face remains the same. Here, give me your hands. I'll try and see if there is anything else. We both place one of our hands onto Donata's. It takes her a moment, but she takes a deep breath and her eyes are white for a while. Suddenly, her body starts convulsing and she starts murmuring something in Italian. Oh my God, is she okay? Isabel asks. I don't know. Immediately her body goes still and she opens her eyes in a hurry. Her breaths are heavy and I can hear her heart pounding. I don't know much about oracles, but this must not be a good sign. Blood. All I saw was blood. Isabel seems shocked for a moment, but she gathers herself together. So is there anything you can do to improve his mood? Typical. She doesn't want anything ruining her path to power. Not my bad mood or Donata's prediction. What do you mean, dear? I mean that Zane has been an asshole this entire year. He gets ticked off at anything and the only time he's okay is when he's fucking other women. Donata's smile wavers and I'm not sure if she wants to grimace or laugh. Isabel, go back to the pack house. I need to talk to Donata. Gladly. She leaves the cabin with a huff and I listen and to make sure she is nowhere near the cabin before I ask Donata. What did you really see, Donata? She frowns and takes a deep breath. Quite frankly, I'm not sure. I saw Alessandra in your arms, covered in blood. I wince. That particular vision is lasered in my mind forever. Then I saw you. You were covered in blood, standing in front of a pile of bodies. So I'm going to become a murderer. Well, this could be a metaphor. It could simply be a sign that you and Isabel mating will bring nothing but bad to this pack. What if it's another past thing, like the dream I had? I don't know what to tell you. Zane. This is something better suited for my sister. But she's in Italy. I can feel my frustration grow. Sometimes I think Donata causes more problems for me instead of offering me glimpses into the future like she's supposed to. What type of oracle has visions of the past? That defeats the purpose. So are you coping with not being with Alessandra other than being an asshole like Isabel said? I have someone at the police station give me the files of the criminals in California. Then I hunt them down and kill them. Ah, so bloodless is your choice of coping. She looks at me in disapproval. It's the only way to distract Raphael. And I'm running out of people to kill. 𝐶HAPTRA team, go west. Find someone who shares your definition of love. Mark and Panidali 1460 tell 𝐊𝐢𝐬𝐷𝐬𝐻𝐿. I am bored out of my mind. The only thing on my mind is my beauty. Rosanna. Unfortunately, I am stuck listening to these mindless men ramble on and on about what is wrong with the pack. We are the strongest pack in Europe, so if you ask me, everything seems to be right. They just think because I am young, I do not know what I am doing. I brought this pack up from nothing. My father had left the pack in ruins by the time I became alpha. Who was to blame him? He had lost his only will to live. My mother. I wasn't enough for him to be happy. Alpha, the Florentine Signoria has agreed to. I cut him off with a shush. Using my wolf hearing, I try to listen in on what I heard a few seconds ago. It can't be. But I would recognize those moans anywhere. My anger must be displayed on my face because every man in the room is suddenly looking at anything but me. With a growl, I stand up and nearly rip the door off on my quest to get to my beauty. I don't know who, but someone is going to be murdered tonight, and I'm going to enjoy it. Let me out. My wolf nearly takes control of me, but I use my wolf speed to get to Rosanna's room faster. This time I do rip the door off. The sight that greets me is my mate kissing the neck of a man as she grinds her hips against him, pushing herself up and down as he fills her. His hands are up her dress as his mouth suckless on her breast. She's straddling him, and I know she can feel my presence because she starts grinding harder on him. She looks over her shoulder and gives me a wicked smile. Goddess, I'm going to kill this man. In a second, I'm ripping her off of him. I grab the man she was on by his throat and hold him up in the air. His face turns to a shade of red before it morphs into blue. Lorenzo, stop. He's innocent. Rosanna yells at me. She sounds as if she might cry any second. I only smirk in return. How could she expect me to let him live? Everyone knows she's mine, but clearly, it's not obvious enough. She would hate me for pissing on her, but it would get the point across. Oh well, this will do. I look at the man in my hand as the life slowly starts to leave his eyes. I pity him. I do. Who can resist Rosanna? There is a reason I call her beauty. Unfortunately for him, that's not enough to spare him. He has had the gift of her touch, and for that, he must die. The last guy certainly paid for it. I drop his body on the ground and mind link one of my guards to retrieve his body. His corpse will be displayed for everyone to see so they know the repercussions for touching my mate. And just to drive the point home, I plan on fucking her thoroughly in this very room which currently has no door. Everyone will soon hear who she truly belongs to. I finally turn around and my angry eyes meet her wide, brown ones. Mine. 𝐿𝐸𝐴𝐴𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸𝐸�00 I'm still not used to living in a castle, but it sure does have its perks. My smile vanishes when I remember that in a couple of days Zane and Isabel will be getting marked in the very castle I've grown so fond of. It's an old tradition to get marked in front of the entire pack, but it's usually done back home in 𝐿𝐸𝐲𝐻𝐻. My sister, however, wants to follow the old tradition of getting marked in the spot that many of the pack's alphas and lunas have gotten marked. I think the last time it happened was with Zane's great-grandfather. Most wolves don't have the patience to arrange a whole trip to Italy to get marked, but Isabel and Zane were able to wait a full 2 years. Wonder what people think of that. As the day of their marking approaches, my wolf grows more silent. She hasn't spoken much since we landed in Italy 2 years ago, but now all I've received is radio silence. I'm hoping that once Zane marks Isabel, it will fully sever our connection and my wolf will finally take the hint. Rise and shine. Gorgeous. I turn my head away from the window and smile when I see Vincenzo. In my time here, I've made some friends. I have a lot more friends here than I do back home. Vincenzo is my best friend, though. He's my hype man who occasionally also plays the part of my wingman. I also help him out with the ladies more often than not. I'm not stupid. I know he was sent here to spy on me for Zane, but I think our friendship has made him switch sides. Now he flirts with me all the time and sets me up with a hookup now and then. I'm still a virgin, but there are so many sexual acts that don't require intercourse. There's just always been something missing when I'm about to have sex. It feels more profound somehow, and perhaps that only applies because I've never done it before. I'm sure Zane has a whole harem by now. I haven't asked about him, but word gets through the grapevine even on another continent. He hasn't been very faithful to his mate. People believe that his ways will change once he marks Isabel, but I think he should get hordated on his forehead. Oh God, please tell me you didn't fuck him. My brows furrow in confusion. What is he talking about? Then I smell it, sex. No, he was just showing his appreciation to me. If you know what I mean, I tell him with a laugh. He lets out a sigh of relief. I'm guessing reporting back to your cousin, who is also your soon-to-be alpha, that you failed at the one to ask you were assigned is not the best thing in the world. He falls onto his back on my bed. I get to live another day. I doubt Zane would kill you if I slept with someone else. Silence. He whips his head around to me and gives me a look that suggests I'm stupid. For someone who has mated to an alpha, you don't understand all the logistics. What do you mean? Wolves are possessive over their mates, but alphas are a whole different story. Imagine the restlessness you feel that drives you to find meaningless hookups or participate in every race our pack holds. Now multiply that by 10. That's what Zane feels. Seriously, you're exaggerating. You think Zane is buried in pussy because he's sex-deprived. I bet your sister would open up her legs if given the chance. I just look at him with an eyebrow raised. Still don't believe me. Zane looks forward to the updates I send him. Watch, it's 1 a.m. over there right now, but if I text him something about you, he will read it. He proceeds to grab his phone and text something to Zane. We both stare at the screen, and in a couple of seconds, it shows that he did read the message. He's too much of a dick to respond, but the message was seen by him. Weird. All right, enough talking. You have to get ready so I can drop you off at the elder's house and you can do whatever the hell you want to do with that psycho old lady. That lady might have answers to some questions I have. I answer him with a stare that leaves no room for question. Fine. But don't say I didn't warn you. Vincenzo leaves the room and I try to get dressed in a hurry. What does one wear to a meeting with an oracle werewolf who happens to be centuries old? I settle on an all-black outfit. Not too formal and not too casual. I take a look in the mirror and evaluate my appearance. My hair has gotten longer and I usually leave it curled instead of straightening it like I used to back home. I've started wearing makeup more often too. Why didn't anyone tell me a 𝐊𝐤𝐬𝐸 could change your whole look? I rush down the stairs of this glorious place and end up bumping into someone. Someone's in a rush to see me, the man says. I look up and see that it's Amir. He's looking at me with lust in his eyes. His hands grab the crooks of my arms and bring me closer to him so I can feel his erection pressing into me. Amir was the guy I hooked up with last night and he is as handsome as they come. His eyes are a deep black and his brown skin glows in the sun. I bite my lip and weigh my options. Would Vincenzo mind if I was late? How many times has he been late for our plans because he was chasing some girl? As if he can read my thoughts. A honk echoes through the foyer of the castle. I push away from Amir, give him a wink, and walk out the door. I walk towards Vincenzo's car and hop in. He gives me a scowl that says he is not happy with my decision to go meet this lady. I look out the window and he starts driving. I want to tell him why I'm going. I do. But how do I explain something that I don't even understand to him? I know we are close, but if I told him, he would report it back to Zane, and that can't happen. The drive doesn't take very long. Within minutes, I am staring at a cottage. It doesn't look very well maintained, but this woman is my last hope. I turn my head to Vincenzo, who looks disgusted with the sight in front of him. I'll mind. Link you when I'm done. You must be crazy if you think I'm going to leave you here alone. What's the worst that can happen? They say that she got so many visions of the future that she can't tell what's real anymore. I'll be fine, but if it makes you feel any better, you can wait in the car. He wants to argue with me but decides against it. I get out and walk towards the shack. The steps leading up to the door are unstable and creak with my weight. This place is in desperate need of renovation. The owner needs to watch some HGTV and fix this monstrosity. I'm one step away from the door when it flies open. There is nobody behind it, but I can see inside. With a few more steps, I'm standing inside the run-down home of 𝐊𝐤𝐬𝐸. I walk in and am shocked to find a beautiful home. Looks like someone has watched HGTV. It's glorious and a lot bigger than I anticipated. There are plants everywhere as well as crystals. I've been expecting you. My hand goes to my chest and I nearly let out a yell of fright. I turn around and am face to face with none other than 𝐊𝐤𝐬𝐸 herself. She's the sister of Donata, the elder back home. While Donata is more of a people person, 𝐊𝐤𝐬𝐸 is a recluse. I can't remember the last time I saw her at a function in the last 2 years. 𝐊𝐤𝐬𝐸 and Donata were part of the Medici family, a powerful banking family that ruled Florence. They ran away when they discovered they had become supernatural. The sisters were born human, but the goddess had other plans for them. One morning they woke up with the ability to see into the future. From that point on, they were to live the lives of honorary werewolves who had psychic abilities. 𝐊𝐤𝐬𝐸 and Donata are the oldest living members of the Luna Rossa pack. They were born in the Italian Renaissance from what I know. Tell me what brings you here, dear. This is going to sound crazy, but there's this statue that looks exactly like me. I shout. She looks at me like it's no big deal. Do you have an artistic lover? Maybe he made it in your honor. What? No. This statue is one of the ones that wrap around the castle. It's a statue of a past Luna. Well, it's normal to find similarities. She might be one of your ancestors. This isn't a similarity. She looks exactly like me. Why don't you give me your hands and I'll tell you what I see? I place my hands out, my palms facing up. She places a crystal in each of them before closing her eyes and holding a crystal of her own. 𝐊𝐲𝐬 takes a deep breath and mumbles something in Italian. Alessandra, daughter of betas and the youngest child of 3. Yeah? By a couple of minutes. You were kicked out of your pack by your mate. You have made a good life for yourself here. You miss your family, but you're glad to have made some friends here. You are dreading the day your mate marks another. She continues to spew information that I already know. Tears well in my eyes as I realize that I'm going to be like her. Mateless. But it isn't because the goddess didn't give me a mate. It's because he wants someone else. Your mind is plagued with questions. Seeing the statue has confused you and you want answers. She abruptly stops stalking. Her eyes start glowing white and I have no clue what the fuck I'm supposed to do in this situation. Is this normal? Do I call for help? West. You must go west. She gasps and takes a deep breath in, clutching her throat. Her eyes are wide as she looks at me with a gaze that pierces my soul. You must go west. I know. You already said that, 𝐊𝐲𝐬. No, you don't understand. They want you to go west. Her eyes dart around the room in a panicked manner. She leans in to whisper in my ear. She wants you to go west. West could mean anything. Am I supposed to just grab a compass and start walking? I don't know, dear. The spirits give me information to deliver, but it is up to you to interpret it. With a sigh, I lean back against the wall. This visit is only causing me to have more questions. What could going west mean? Do I go to some different country, or is west a metaphor for something? West. How did I not think about this before? Thank you. 𝐊𝐲𝐬. I know what to do now. I tell her. With a jump. I'm up and rushing towards Vincenzo's car. Be careful. I sense something ominous is approaching. 𝐊𝐲𝐬 shouts at me as I go down her creaky stairs. I offer her a nod and a smile. When I get to the car, Vincenzo is taking a nap. So much for protecting me. I knock on the window so he can unlock the car. He wakes with a startle and scans his surroundings, looking for a potential threat. His sight lands on me and he lets out a sigh of relief. Hello? Open the door. It's cold. Vincenzo unlocks the door and I plant myself on the leather seat. New confidence surges through me and I look at Vincenzo. Take me to the West Wing. 𝐶HEPER19 Fate is evil when love is real, it finds a way. Avatar Rogue 𝐊𝐢𝐬𝐿 1468. Rose and arrested her head against Lorenzo's naked torso. They were basking in the sun that filtered through their bedroom window. Lorenzo clutched Rosanna's hand and kissed her knuckles. My beauty, we should get up soon, Lorenzo told her. He had no desire to leave the comfort of his mate, but as alpha he had duties. She wrapped her hand around his bicep, her hand straining to completely grasp it. Just wait a little bit more. Isn't it a beautiful day? A beautiful day it was, but Lorenzo did not care for the sun or the flowers that were blooming outside. Any day was beautiful with his mate by his side. I never thought I would have this, Rosanna whispered. Have what? This. A relationship with my fated. I never thought I would have love, she said in a sad tone. They're all dead. Rosanna's forehead crinkled in confusion. Who? Everyone that could have meant something to him. I killed them all alongside him. Rosanna let out a gasp as she turned around to face Lorenzo. She knew who he was talking about. A tear flowed down her cheek as she was reminded of her past. No one will hurt you again. Lorenzo's chest ached as he looked at his beauty crying. He was instantly filled with regret. What if he had gone out searching for his mate instead of hiding from her? He probably would have found her before that bastard was able to marry her. I'm sorry, Amor. I should have found you sooner, he whispered. He brought his lips to her forehead and kissed it. She shook her head in disagreement. It was fate. There's nothing we could have done to prevent it. Lorenzo didn't say anything. He always thought fate was a silly thing. Why would fate take his mother away from him? Why would it torture his mate with an abusive husband? Why would it make him scared to love? Fate wasn't this beautiful thing that brought us what we were supposed to receive. Fate was evil. The devil in disguise, just waiting for a moment to take away what someone deemed most important to them. His arms tightened around Rosanna. He would never let fate take her away from him too. The courtyard is gorgeous, Lorenzo. The flowers surrounding it are so beautiful. That settles it then. That is where we will have our marking ceremony. Rosanna looked up at Lorenzo with a smile. That would be perfect, Amor, she told him. She gave him a quick kiss on the lips and turned to look out the window again. Lorenzo's hands played with the ends of Rosanna's hair. It was his favorite pastime other than sex, of course. Do you really think that once we die, we stay connected through our wolves? Rosanna asked, her voice filled with hope. She had finally given in to her desires and accepted her mate. Now that she had him, she couldn't imagine a life without him. I don't know beauty. I do know one thing. What? One lifetime isn't enough for a love like ours. 𝐿𝐸𝐺𝐸. My feet dragged on the floor as I approached the door. My spirits were low and my curiosity unfulfilled. I kept my head down as I walked to ensure no one would see my face. The smell of vanilla indicated I was here. I sigh as my forehead falls against the door. Vincenzo had refused to take me to the West Wing. He believed it was too dangerous and something he could not keep from his cousin, Zane. I would have snuck in there myself, but I don't know how to get in. The place is shut like a vault at some important bank. With a huff, I grasped the copper doorknob and twisted to the right. The giant wooden doors opened and I met with two smiling faces. Surprise. My hands fly to my mouth as I look at both of them in awe. 𝐊𝐢𝐬𝐬. I yell before I attack them with a hug. I hold them both tightly and breathe in their scents. Tears spring in my eyes as the homesickness kicks in. Their smells remind me of my parents, my house, the lake, and most importantly, pine. To most people, pine probably smells the same everywhere in the world, but I swear there is something different about the pine from home. Unfortunately, the smell I associate with home is also the smell of him. Zane always smelled like pine too. I always thought it was his biggest advantage when we were little. The boy smelled exactly like the environment that surrounded him, making him impossible to track down. When I became his mate, I realized that's not the case. Zane's smell was slightly different. It was fresher than the pine of Lake 𝐷𝐻𝐻. I missed you guys so much. I tell them. We missed you more, Alessia, 𝐿𝐤 says, "No more sad talk. Tell us all of the details about your life in Italy," 𝐊𝐤 says with a hand under her chin and her eyes wide with curiosity. "It's basically the same since the last time you visited. Tell me all about home." "I've been missing it," I tell them. They both exchange a look and glance back at me. "He's amazing, Alessandra," 𝐊𝐤 says with admiration shining in her eyes. They don't have to say his name. I know who they are talking about. 𝐊𝐤 and 𝐊𝐤 give me brief updates about Zane ever since I told them we were mates. That's right, he's not the only one with informants. He's going to be a great alpha week and I'll feel it. Whenever he walks into a room, our backs naturally straighten and our wolves bow their heads. It's something you've got to see. It's incredible," 𝐊𝐤 continues. Hearing this only confirms what I had already known. The marking ceremony is going to be unbearable for me. Zane was a force when he wasn't intensely training to be alpha. I can't imagine what he must be like now. He used to command a room with his presence. Everyone would look to him for instruction, even humans. His dark eyes could control people and he wouldn't even have to utter a word. He must be so different now. I know this is probably not what you wanted to hear, but he also has many lady friends. What about my sister? She's okay with that. Not really, but she can't do much about it, 𝐊𝐤 answered with a shrug. I wasn't upset about the news because I had already heard it through the grapevine. The only thing that puzzled me was my sister's reaction. Isabel was an all-in type of girl. If she had a problem with something, everyone would know. I guess I just couldn't imagine her being nonchalant about it. Plus, it's not like I had the right to be mad. Zane and I were only mates in name. Nothing else. I haven't exactly been a saint either. Now, tell us everything that's been happening with you, 𝐊𝐤 shouted. She was acting like I didn't FaceTime her and 𝐊𝐤 all the time. I filled them in about everything: my flings, my races, Vincenzo, and 𝐊𝐤𝐧𝐬. Does 𝐊𝐤𝐧𝐬 look like Donata? 𝐊𝐤 asked. Yeah. It's pretty weird, actually. The only difference is their color. They both nodded and looked around my room. I tried to see it through their eyes. The glass doors that led to a balcony, the connecting bathroom that was almost the size of my bedroom back home, and the chandelier hanging above my bed where we were laying. Wow, you really get the royal treatment around here, 𝐊𝐤 comments. I guess it was a bit extravagant, but this place was so beautiful that I didn't even mind. It was as if I could feel the history in the walls. Most of the castle has been brought up to date, but its origins remain. The thought brings me happiness. This place has been around for centuries, and so many different people have been in it, and the universe decided that I was going to be one of them too. It's probably because of Ricardo, not to mention all the races I have won here, I tell them. They both share a look that is followed by a smirk. Really? Nothing to do with a certain future alpha, 𝐊𝐤 asks with a smug smile. I only roll my eyes at their comment. That ship sailed a long time ago. Actually, it never even sailed. It was anchored to a dock for eternity. He is marking my sister into days, and you are bringing that up. I believe in love, Alessandra, especially the mate bond. Celine wouldn't have bound your souls for eternity if you two weren't meant to be, 𝐊𝐤 says with a hopeful look in her eye. That's just who 𝐊𝐤 was. She was romantic, and I hope that one day she will find her mate. Not the type of mate I got. I'm talking about the one that would love her at first sight because they were simply meant to be. Forget it. There is something that needs our attention immediately, I tell them. They both give me questioning looks but gesture for me to continue. I need to break into the West Wing and I need your help. I take a deep breath in to calm me down. I am currently pressed up against a wall as 𝐊𝐢𝐬 distracts the guard on duty. I could have taken him down myself, but I just want some information. I'm not here to cause trouble. 𝐊𝐢𝐬 frails her arms around as tears stream down her cheeks. Her usual fair complexion is flushed as she sobs at the guard. He looks perplexed, not knowing what to do with a crying woman. 𝐊𝐢𝐬 rakes her hands through her blonde hair as she continues to convince the guard. Please, sir, you have to help me. She's going crazy. 𝐊𝐢𝐬 yells. Signora, I am sorry, but... Please. She's tearing our room apart. 𝐊𝐢𝐬𝐻𝐿𝐬 screamed from their room. The guard furrowed his brows and went deep into thought. After a while, he nodded and gestured for 𝐊𝐢𝐬 to lead him to the crazy woman. Perfect. I rush over to the door where the guard was standing near moments ago. Using a bobby pin, I started to fiddle around with the lock. The thing was ancient, so I wasn't worried about opening it. I moved the pin around in an up and down motion. I hear a click in the keyhole and a smile spreads across my face. That was actually a lot easier than I had anticipated. They must have really relied on the guard to keep people out. I twist the knob and push the giant doors open. I close them softly behind me once I am inside. Wow, I whisper to myself. The place was beautiful. In front of me was a large hallway. There was a thick cloud of dust engulfing the entire wing, but even that did not distract from the beauty of the West Wing. I take a step forward and head towards what seems to be a ballroom. It's small, probably designed only for people who are close to the 𝐊𝐲 or considered elite. The trim of the walls was gold and it wrapped around the whole room. I didn't whirl in the middle of the ballroom. I can only imagine how magical it must have been to dance around in a ball gown with your mate. My vision flashes wide as I am struck with a daydream. It's me and Zane dancing in the ballroom. I'm in a huge gown and it expands as he spins me around before dipping me. His hands wrap around my waist as he holds me to assure me that he will not let me fall. I shake my head. Whoa. This place is getting to me. I need to find some answers and get out of here. I leave the ballroom and head towards another hallway. This one is full of doors, all of them white. It's the door at the end of the hall that catches my attention, though. It's taller than the rest. It's white with gold words engraved on the top. Thought of 𝐼 invenient. Fate will find a way. I learned it from my Nana. She always said fate will find a way because she believed her and my Nana were separated for so long. But fate found a way to bring them together. It's solid, but it is engraved in the door. I shake my head so I can focus on the task ahead. I have to find some answers or else this will all be for nothing. I open the door and it struggles. With a little bit more force, I push it open. I step into the dark room and my jaw drops. It's beautiful. The room is bigger than the ballroom I was just in. This place was made for a king. I'm sure of it. It was probably the 𝐊𝐴's room. He had amazing taste because I could imagine myself living in this room forever. On the far right wall is a giant window. It overlooked the courtyard where my sister was going to be marked. The thought doesn't dull my mood because I'm still hung up on the beauty of this room. Its walls radiate power, but most of all, love. Lots of love filled this room once upon a time. Some sheets cover the furniture. I can tell, even with the sheets, that everything in this room was grand, but there's something that sticks out. Next to the glorious window I was peering out through a while ago is a giant painting. It's taller than me, but a sheet also covers it. I grasp the corner of the dusty sheet and tug. In one swift motion, the sheet falls to the ground. I take a step back so I can see the full painting. My eyes start at the bottom where there seems to be a marble floor. As my gaze travels up, I see two pairs of feet. One appears to be a man since he is wearing pants, and the other's a woman. Her dress is gorgeous. A deep red ball gown that complements her tan complexion. That's weird. She's wearing the dress I was wearing in my daydream. As my eyes move higher, I gasp in horror. My eyes lock with Zane's. Zane with a beard, who has his arms wrapped around the waist of a young Italian woman. My eyes lock with hers. A chill passes through my body as I continue to stare at the familiar eyes. Eyes that are deep brown. Eyes that I see every day in the mirror. Eyes that are mine. 𝐶HAPT are 20 from this life to the next. Important encounters are planned by the souls long before the bodies see each other. �𝐴𝐿 the wind bristled outside of the Luna Rosa mansion. The stone walls watched as hundreds of pack members gathered for the big day. Today was the day of the marking, the day they would receive their new alpha. Even with all the excitement in the air, the old walls were aware of the truth. There was nothing to be excited about. Once upon a time, this gloomy palace was lively and loud. It was filled with children and hundreds of pack members. The pups were eager to become wolves and protect their pack, while the adults were ready to pass down their traditions. Somewhere along the way, the pack lost its culture and traditions. Its history was stained with blood, and instead of embracing it, everyone fled. The Luna Rosa pack became the Blood Moon pack. It no longer called Italy its home. Of course, there were still people living in the Italian mansion. Except, all those people were there to train or to watch over the grounds. However, deep in the woods, you could hear the howls of some wolves at night. The wolves who grew up here, the ones who felt the blood of their ancestors flowing through their veins. They weren't aware of the truth that this day was supposed to be much more monumental than people were giving it credit for. Today was to be the day that two wolves who were broken apart connected again after 500 years. Unfortunately, fate doesn't always go the way we want it to. Instead of marking his other half, Zane and Alessandra was going to mark her sister. Not because of love. No, it was all for convenience. He needed a Luna for political reasons, and choosing his childhood girlfriend was quite believable. That's the thing about love, though. You can't fake it. It was clear to most people that Zane didn't love Isabel. Not like he used to, at least. This day wasn't just about the soulmates reconnecting again. It was much more than that. This was about the mass murder of all those werewolves centuries ago. They were killed by the hands of the person whose sole duty was to protect them. Their sacrifices were for love and loyalty, all of which were being thrown in the dirt by this marking. Centuries ago, Alpha Lorenzo Morti filled Celine's temple with the corpses of her children. He didn't stop till she complied with his demands that his mate and him would be given one more chance. It was barbaric, but the loss of a mate has driven werewolves to the edges of morality. In the eastern wing of the palace was the woman of the hour. Isabel Romano sat in a white cushioned chair. 3 mirrors surrounded her as she got ready for her big day. Her brown hair sat on the nape of her neck in a bun of fist-8 braids. 2 white lilies were pressed into the bun, similar to the bouquet that she was going to hold as she walked to Zane. Typically during these ceremonies, the woman would wear a white dress made of silk. It was usually loose and slightly revealing. This was to hint at what was to come once nightfall approached. The woman would wear no jewelry or makeup. The point of the ceremony was to unite the two souls in the most natural form. The man would wear white linen pants that almost resembled pajamas. Their chest would be revealed to everyone as they marked their mate. This symbolized the idea that he would always expose his heart to his mate. Both of them would be barefoot, to be more in touch with the earth. It connected them with the goddess of the earth, 𝐊𝐢𝐬𝐷. Additionally, marking ceremonies were only done on full moons to receive the blessing of 𝐊𝐢𝐬𝐬, goddess of the moon. Everything was almost prepared for the ceremony. Isabel kept looking in the mirror, specifically her neck. She touched the area where her shoulder and neck connected. A smile pulled at her lips as she imagines 𝐿𝐢𝐬𝐬 sinking his canines into it. Once upon a time, when she was younger and nicer, she thought the possibility of bearing a mark had been lost forever. Now she was here, defying the odds. Isn't someone excited? Jackie? Isabel's best friend asked her. Isabel's only response was a smile. She was ready to no longer be an Omega and finally become the Luna she was always supposed to be. As if Jackie could read her mind, she asked the dreadful question everyone seems to be asking Isabel these days. I can't believe he made you an Omega. Like you're his mate, right? Did something happen? Isabel gave her a tight-lipped smile. She never knew how to answer that question or the other ones that were thrown at her. Why did Zane make you an Omega? Aren't you his mate? Don't you care that he is cheating on you? Wait, didn't you cheat on him first? None of them had the guts to ask their beloved future alpha the question. At first, it was out of respect for his privacy, but now it's more about fear. Zane had definitely hardened up over the past 2 years. Isabel didn't care about any of this, though. She was just glad that the day she had been dreaming about since she was 14 was finally coming true. She thanked her lucky stars for not bringing Zane's actual mate into the picture. Deep down, Isabel knew that she and 𝐿𝐢𝐬𝐬 had loved each other at some point. Their love was more a form of grieving than anything. Once they had gotten over it, their love started to fade. Maybe it still existed if you looked hard enough, but Isabel knew that if Zane's mate were to appear, she would stand no chance. She knew in her heart that she would never have looked at Zane if her mate was in the picture. That's the thing about the mate bond. It consumed you to the point of no return. Few have resisted it, but never forever. Where is your sister? Valentina asked. Maybe she is helping the 𝐊𝐢𝐬𝐷 and 𝐊𝐿𝐼𝐺 with the preparations. Isabel answered her mother. Isabel was wrong. Alessandra was cooped up in her bathroom staring at herself in the mirror. She wasn't ready to see 𝐿𝐻𝐬𝐬𝐬 after all these years. His dark eyes always stole her attention and his scent. Goddess his scent. She had smelled the fresh pine smell as soon as Zane's car had pulled up to the palace. The second the pine hit her nostrils, she dove under her covers to surround herself with her own scent instead. What worried her more was the painting she had discovered in the West Wing. It had been 2 days since the incident, and she still didn't know what to do. Was she supposed to tell someone? Is it right for Zane and Isabel to continue the ceremony when there might be something bigger going on? The questions plagued her mind, but deep inside she already had her answer. She would never ruin this day for her sister. Not after all the pain she had endured. This was her chance to find love after losing her soulmate all those years ago. Alessandra took a deep breath in and wiped her hands on her dress. With a final look in the mirror, she left the bathroom and headed toward her sister. She found Isabel in front of a vanity with a big smile on her face. Her eyes were scrunched in joy, and she had never looked so beautiful before. Valentina's arms were around her oldest daughter's neck while her face was pressed against hers. Valentina's green eyes brimmed with tears as she stared at Isabel. Nobody expected Isabel to find happiness after the death of her mate. It was a parent's worst nightmare, knowing that your child would live their life with no one to share it with or to experience the beauty of the world with. Love is something humans can live without. They can find it with friends or passions, maybe even animals. Some of them even end up loving multiple people in their lifetime. That's not the case for wolves. There's only one person a wolf will ever truly love in their life. When a human marries someone, there is always the probability of divorce. Sometimes they fall out of love, while other times love just simply isn't enough to keep the marriage going. When a wolf is marked, they are bound for life, from this life to the next. Alessandra stared at her mother and sister. A part of her knew that this was the complete end for her and Zane. Yet, there was a part of her that was genuinely happy. She was glad to see that her sister's dream was finally going to come true. So what if Alessandra would no longer have a mate? It's not like her and Zane had a chance in the first place. They were doomed from the start, hating each other since they were children. "You look breathtaking," Alessandra told her sister. She was still standing by the door, her hand on the wall to stabilize herself. Isabel whipped her head around and smiled at her sister. "Come here. Ma wants to get a picture," Isabel said. Alessandra picked up her dress so she didn't step on it and walked toward her family. She handed her phone to 𝐊𝐢𝐬. "Say cheese," 𝐊𝐢𝐬 told them. "Cheese," they all said with bright smiles on their faces. "Okay, girls, the moon is nearing its apex. We better get going," Valentina told everyone. Isabel stood with a smile. She could almost feel it. The power she would soon receive as the full moon reached its apex, deeming her Luna of the blood moon pack and mate to Zane 𝐷𝐞𝐿𝐽. The courtyard was full of members from the blood moon pack. All of them were filled with excitement for the new change that was to occur. It had been so long since this pack had a Luna, and Isabel Romana was perfect for the job. 𝐊𝐢𝐳 and Donata were standing at the altar with Zane and his father. They were laying out their crystals to prepare for the ceremony ahead of them. It was actually quite simple. Zane would dig his canines into Isabel's neck. Then Isabel would do the same to him, and they would shift into their wolves. To complete the ceremony, they would lead the pack on a run through the woods that would symbolize the shift in leadership from Alpha Giovanni to his son and his mate. Donata watched Zane from the corner of her eye. She still believed all of this was a mistake, one the pack would have to pay for in the future. Zane stood at the altar with his white silk pants on and nothing else. He looked over at his dad, who had a proud smile on his face. "I'm glad you stepped up and took your duties seriously, son." Zane's only response was a smile. "She would be so proud of you," Alpha Giovanni said with tears in his eyes. He was a tough guy, one that was notorious for showing little to no emotion. Even when Zane was a little boy, he never saw his father show any emotion. His face always remained stoic, no matter how funny, joyful, or sad the situation was. The only times he smiled was when his mate was around. Lucille brought out the best in Gio. To her, he was never the scary alpha people talked about. He was just her Gio. Zane had never seen his dad cry, but that man wept when he felt his other half be torn away from him. The day his Lucille left him was the day his heart died. That was one thing Zane and his father had in common. They didn't love much about the world, but that was simply because Lucille 𝐷𝐞𝐿𝐽 was their world. She had left them, and now they had nothing left to love. It's time. The mood is almost at its apex, 𝐊𝐢𝐳 shouted. 𝐷𝐞𝐝 rang the bell that signaled for Isabel to come out. Isabel was escorted by her entire family. Her arms were hooked with her parents while her brother and sister walked behind them. All of the pack members looked at Isabel with bright smiles. Zane watched as she approached. Her hair was flowing down her back. His eyes were drawn to her slender neck as he imagined sinking his canines into it. She was wearing a long red dress that brought out her tan complexion, which seemed to be closer to brown than tan since the last time he saw her. The dress was made of silk and it suited her so well. Her eyes were focused on the ground as if she couldn't bear to look up. Zane kept staring at her, daring her to look at him. How long had it been since he had looked into her brown eyes? Her eyes seemed to put him in a trance every time he looked at them. His mate always looked beautiful. "Something is wrong," 𝐷𝐞𝐝 said, pointing at the moon. The moon was very much red. Blood moon. Blood moons only happen when there is a total lunar eclipse. How is this possible? Someone from the crowd shouted. Everyone broke out in a frenzy, shouting questions at each other. It was scientifically impossible for something like this to happen. The next blood moon wasn't for another couple of months. Though many believed that the blood moon pack got its name from the massacre 𝐊𝐢𝐳𝐬𝐷𝐞𝐝 already had committed centuries ago, that wasn't the case. The real reason was that all of the wolves of this pack lost control of their human side on a blood moon. Their bodies would remain human, but their minds belonged to their wolves. It's when they had the most power, making them nearly invincible. However, there seemed to be a problem this time around. Nobody seemed to be snapping into their wolf side, giving their wolves full control of their bodies. Instead, everyone continued to freak out. The commotion made Alessandra look up. Without even meaning to, her eyes sought out Zane's. The second they connected, it was as if a switch had been flipped. Zane's eyes turned completely black. Alessandra's eyes did the same as they stared at each other. �𝐨𝐬𝐵 and 𝐷𝐞𝐝's eyes glowed white as they chanted together. "She is with us," they yelled. Everyone looked around in confusion as the sisters continued to chant. Zane's eyes never left Alessandra's. He continued to stare at her with something new, something foreign, love. Except it wasn't really Zane. "Mine," Raphael spoke. His voice was deep and angry as he stared at his mate. It was the voice of an alpha, one that boomed and demanded attention. Everyone stopped panicking and looked in the direction of their soon-to-be alpha. "Son, are you okay?" Gio asked. Zane simply ignored him. Alessandra pushed through her family to get to the front. Isabel's hand went out and grabbed Alessandra's arm in a tight grip. "What the hell are you doing?" Isabel said in an angry tone. Alessandra's eyes went to where Isabel's hand grasped her arm, the skin around the area turning red with how hard she was squeezing it. Alessandra yanked her arms away and looked at her in the eyes. "Now, is that any way to treat your Luna?" 𝐊𝐢 spoke. Everyone gasped. What was Alessandra doing? She was not their Luna. However, her voice was so powerful that she might as well have been. Alessandra strode over to Zane with confidence. She climbed the steps to reach the altar that was surrounded by white roses. Her hand went to touch the side of his face. It traveled through his hair, gently calming it as she took him in. Zane's hands traveled down to her waist as he brought her closer. "We did it," 𝐊𝐢 spoke. "I promised, didn't I?" Raphael answered with a smirk. He couldn't wait another moment to be with his mate. His hand went to the back of her head, gripping her hair as he connected their lips. Their kiss was harsh. They didn't have time to go slow. By this point, the moon had reached its apex. The little trace left of Alessandra and Zane was gone. Their bodies were being fully controlled by Raphael and 𝐊𝐢. They continued to kiss as their mouths explored each other for the first time in centuries. The kiss was almost violent with how fast they were going. Raphael traveled from her lips to her cheek to her neck. He kissed her neck, leaving his mark on every spot he touched. His tongue traced the exact spot he would mark her. Raphael knew he was running out of time. He had to finish what he started. Everyone watched in horror as Raphael swung his head back. His eyes connected with the moon and a smirk appeared on his face. She had actually come through for once. As his eyes locked with the moon, his canines extended. He brought his face down to 𝐊𝐢's neck and sunk them into her tender flesh. 𝐊𝐢 let out a scream that turned into a moan. She could feel the poison from his canines mixing with her blood. 𝐊𝐢's canines extended as well and she sunk them into Raphael's neck. He gathered her in his arms and brought her close. Her body slumped against his in exhaustion. He continued to hold her in his arms. He squeezed her tight and breathed in her scent. Even after all these years, she smelled like vanilla. A smile made its way onto Raphael's face. He had done it. All of the people he sacrificed, including himself, were for this moment. The moment he would hold his beauty in his arms again. I guess we did end up getting marked in the courtyard. 𝐊𝐢 spoke, her words coming out muffled against his chest. Raphael let out a chuckle. I guess we did. He pulled away from her and looked into her eyes. He had made so many mistakes in the past. If he had marked her the second they met, things would have been so much easier. Tears filled 𝐊𝐢's eyes as she stared at Raphael. I love you, she told him. He brought his forehead down to hers and locked his eyes with hers. His hands were holding her face like she would float away if he let go. From this life to the next, he responded, 𝐶HAPTR21 Romanos, De Lucas, and Mordius. But I crumble completely when you cry. 505 Italy 1468. Lorenzo marched down the town, his boots alerting the people of his arrival. Everyone returned to their house as they heard him approaching. Lorenzo's eyes were bloodshot and emotional. His anger radiated off of him in waves. His brother-in-law marched behind him, trying to stop him from the sins he was going to commit. The alpha approached the house. His steps were purposeful. With a quick motion, he ripped the door of the house off its hinges. The wood clattered on the cobblestone beneath him. A man was standing behind what used to be a door. His eyes were wide with shock, but it transformed into acceptance. He knew what his future held, and he accepted it for his alpha. Lorenzo walked up to the man until they were chest to chest. He could smell the sweat on the man from a day's work. What's your name? Lorenzo asked in a monotone voice. 𝐿𝐢𝐻𝐿 Alpha. Goodbye, 𝐿𝐢𝐻𝐿. With those words, Lorenzo pushed his hand into 𝐿𝐢𝐻𝐿's chest, right into his heart. He tore through his chest cavity as 𝐿𝐢𝐻𝐿's mouth opened in a silent scream. Lorenzo's hand reaches deeper, almost reaching the heart. Rosanna would not have wanted this brother, Dante De Luca said to his brother-in-law. Lorenzo looked at him. His emotional eyes met Dante's concerned ones. You know what else she would have wanted? He went deeper into 𝐿𝐢𝐻𝐿's chest and wrapped his hands around his heart, giving it a squeeze. To live? With one firm tug, he ripped 𝐿𝐢𝐻𝐿's heart out. Blood splattered onto Lorenzo's face, but his expression remained the same. 𝐊𝐢𝐬𝐑𝐞𝐲 watched from behind the curtain. His mate watched the love of her life's heart be ripped out. At first, she thought it was all a hallucination, but the proof was in front of her. Alpha Lorenzo was covered in blood and her mate lay on the ground, dead. The Alpha's head turned, making eye contact with her through the curtain even though he couldn't see her. Sight wasn't necessary. Could hear all of their hearts beating wildly. She knew she was next. At least her kids were spared from their Alpha's descent into darkness. Alpha Lorenzo was a cold Alpha. He had no light in his world of darkness until he met Rosanna. 𝐊𝐢𝐳𝐬𝐲 mate knew that nothing could save her now. He didn't care about anything anymore. She could feel it in the cold room. Rosanna was his light. Her warmth had thawed his cold heart. Her love consumed him, for he had met her on life's darkest road, and her soul had become his moon. For that reason alone, 𝐊𝐢𝐳𝐬𝐲 mate knew that this was her last day on this earth. Lorenzo had lost his light, and he wouldn't stop until he attained it again. The emptiness that filled his heart made him numb. He hadn't just failed his mate, but his son as well. A son that was going to take over the pack one day and carry on the Moretti name. He would have a little sister one day that looked just like her mother because Rose Ambelucci was light. She was warmth. She was everything. Lorenzo and his son would protect mini Rosanna with everything they had, even though she would be perfectly capable because she was a Moretti. Lorenzo would have had Leonardo da Vinci paint them a family portrait because he could tell that the young man was gifted in the arts. Instead, he stood with the heart of a man in his hands. It was ironic, really. The heart is a symbol of love, but even as he held 𝐊𝐢𝐳𝐬𝐲's heart in his hands, he felt nothing. The heart inside his own body didn't even stutter as 𝐊𝐢𝐳𝐬𝐲's lifeless body lay on the ground. 𝐊𝐢𝐳𝐬𝐲's mate watched, knowing that she would soon look like her mate. Her family would not be the last to meet their end by Alpha Lorenzo Moretti. Lorenzo filled Celine's temple, very one Rosanna spent so much time praying at, with the corpses of her children. She had taken his child. Why shouldn't he do the same? It had begun with the families of the traitors who were directly involved with Rose's death, but once Lorenzo realized that the goddess had not answered, he kept going. No one except actual children were spared. He would not stop until Celine agreed to give him and Rosanna another chance. Zane and Alessandra. A common misconception about my kind is that we are equally human and wolf. The truth is that even when we are in our human forms, we still have our wolf senses. Our sight is sharper and our hearing is enhanced. The one thing that is shared between the two states is emotion. When we're sad, we can feel it deep in our bones, and when we're angry, we can become cold-blooded killers ready to eliminate the source of our rage. But when we're happy, it's this joy that motivates us. It squeezes our heart in the best way, and our body fills with warmth. My whole life I believed I loved Isabel, and maybe I did. Love can take many forms, but not all of them are strong enough to outlast the struggles that come with life. All I know is that when I look at Alessandra, a warmth overtakes me. The desire to hold her and never let her get away from me is so strong that I'm already planning our exit from the courtyard. We stare at each other with wide eyes. I look at her neck where my canines have left their mark. Dark blood surrounds the wound, and I'm sure mine looks the same way. What the fuck? Both of us turn to look at who just yelled. Isabel's glare meets my eyes as she stares at me with an expression that is so full of rage it would have made a weaker man look away. Her glare shifts from me to her sister. You just marked my mate. Alessandra, she yells. Alessandra looks stunned. We just got control of ourselves, and the first thing we are faced with is a yelling woman ready to deck us in the face. I'm so sorry, Isabel, Alessandra says. Sorry. You're sorry. You can't just steal him like that. We've been together for years. This wasn't supposed to happen. How could you do this to me? Isabel yells. She's crying by this point. I know her well enough to know that those tears are fake. Valentina pushes through the crowd to wrap her arms around Isabel. Isabel instantly falls into her mother's chest and begins to sob. Valentina gives Alessandra a disapproving look as if this is all her fault. Alessandra's eyes fall to the ground in defeat. Her lips pull into a pout, and it makes me want to take her far away from here. The action fills me with rage. This isn't her fault. She shouldn't have to look so shameful. What the fuck is wrong with you, man? First, you make my sister an omega, and then you go and mark my other sister. Ricardo yells. He's charging toward me, ready to attack. Honestly, I deserve it. This was not the plan, and now Alessandra is stuck with me forever. Stop. Ricardo? Alessandra shouts. Her eyes are brimming with tears as she looks at her older brother. Why, Alessandra? He just marked you. He proclaimed Isabel as his mate years ago. Exactly. Proclaimed. Isabel's mate is dead, okay? Dead. We need to accept the fact and move on. I can tell the pack members are stunned. No one other than my family and the Romanos knew of this. So she doesn't deserve to experience love just because her mate is dead. Ricardo exclaims. Alessandra looks at the ground to gather herself. Her red eyes meet mine before they wander back to her brother. What about Zane's made trick? Doesn't she deserve to be loved? Her voice is a whisper, and I'm surprised he even heard her. Ricardo is stunned into silence. His gaze shifts to me, and I know I'm fucked. He walks over to me, completely calm and collected. Did you know Alessandra was your mate? Yes, I answer. For how long? Since her birthday. I tell him. I don't cower. Instead, I look him right in the eye and tell the truth. And you sent her away. Yes, why? Why would you two lie? We've never liked each other. How are we supposed to love each other? Alessandra answers for me. No, you know what I think. I think Senior couldn't commit to one girl, he says in a firm tone. That's not. I mean, that would explain why you have been drowning in pussy for the past 2 years, right? Instantly, I look at Alessandra to see her reaction. She doesn't really react, so I'm guessing this was something she was already aware of. Fuck. Wait. Why do I care? Damn, Mr. Alpha. I see this with respect, but why wouldn't you want Alessandra? She really knows how to make a man feel good, if you know what I mean. I feel my heart stop. Not in hurt, but in anger. My head whips to look at who the fuck just said that. My eyes land on a tall man. He's looking at me like we're buddies in a locker room. He couldn't be further from the truth. Our relationship is simply one of a murderer and a victim. Or a corpse, because that's what he's going to be soon. The fuck did you just say? I ask him. Ricardo stands at my side ready to assist me. I just meant it like Alessandra is so cool and smart and she can do this thing. I don't let him finish. Within seconds I have my hands wrapped around his throat. His feet no longer touch the ground and his face is turning red. Go on. Tell me what the fuck was going to come out of your mouth. He tries to speak, but all that comes out is air. Put him down. Zane. Alessandra shouts, and I can hear her footsteps as she runs to where I am. Why? So you two can fuck again? I ask her. My tone is calm, but I know everyone around me can feel the rage coming from my body. It's none of your business. You were doing the same thing, you fucking hypocrite. Alessandra shouts. She's right, but that doesn't mean I'm not going to kill this guy. Well, it is my business, Ricardo says as he walks over to me. He takes the man from me and looks him in the eye. Did you touch my sister? Amir. We didn't have sex. It was just some other stuff. Ricardo chuckles in a menacing way. What the fuck did I tell everyone before she got to Italy? Amir looks at the ground, not wanting to say the answer. 𝐿'Alessandra is off limits, he says, his voice trembling in anger. You know what that fucking means. It means you don't touch her. You don't look at her. Hell, you don't even breathe near her. Ricardo's eyes are full of rage. Amir blatantly disrespected the orders of my future beta, and for that, he will pay, hey? You can't make me off limits. I'm my own damn person, and if I want to sleep with someone, I will. Alessandra shouts. I always knew she was a secret slut. First, she goes to Italy to find some new men, and then she steals my man. Isabel yells. I look at Alessandra and our eyes are full of unshed tears. The sight unnerves me. She's always so strong, and I think I've seen her almost cry today more than I have my entire life. I control my anger and walk over to Isabel. My steps deliberate and my eyes stern. Her eyes grow wide as I approach, and I see something in them I've never seen before. Fear. You will respect your Luna. My voice is firm and I'm practically shaking in anger. She simply nods and looks at the ground. I want words. I will respect my Luna. This goes for everybody. Failure to comply will result in death. I never want to see Alessandra's eyes full of tears again.